This is the most stacked lineup we've ever assembled. For the most credible, informed, and entertaining deadline show anywhere.
Yo, tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you.
Welcome to the Wildcast Podcast, coming to you from Wildcast Studios, with your hosts Adam Lund and Jeremy Boucher.
And that's right, folks. We are back. We are doing our annual trade deadline episodes by that excellent intro that I kind of remember I had to find because like the Spice Girls say, what do you want? What do you really, really want? And we kick it off on the island with color voice of the Islanders, Corey Arsenault. Corey, welcome back. And how's the year been so far?
Well, boys, season's greetings. Thank you for having me. And you know what? The year's been pretty good. I mean, back playing hockey. As always, when Jim Holton has a hockey team here on the island, it's going to be competitive. Not the most talented lineup that we've seen here in his tenure, but certainly a hard-working team. And to tell you the truth, I think they've overachieved to start off this season. I mean, there's lots of holes in the lineup, but they're in around a 500 hockey club, and that's what they were expecting, and that's what they have gotten. Thanks to tremendous goaltending, first and foremost. Frankie LaPena has been on just another level this year. I mean, when he's in goal, we have a chance to win and beat anyone on any given night, and he certainly has come through in spades here for the Islanders. And if not for Frankie in the first third of the season, the record certainly would look a lot different than it does here right now.
So I'm glad you brought up Frankie the franchise. That's where I'm going. On behalf of Jeremy and myself, we are very excited for him to be traded from the island because we can never beat that guy. I think we beat him once in 18 months. We hope he doesn't get dealt to a team in the Maritime division. But is there any chance he doesn't get moved to keep this team competitive, or is this finally the year he gets dealt and you guys get another goaltender that's going to stave off a lot of wins against the Moncton Wildcats?
Well, I know Jim's phone has been buzzing, and there's teams certainly inquiring. The thing with Frankie is, and George and I coined him the franchise because that's certainly what he is. I mean, for one, he's so valuable in the dressing room, first and foremost.
Yeah.
Take away the excellent goaltender he is. He's an unbelievable person off the ice. And those are the type of kids that you want in your room. You want in your program. You want those guys to be the veterans to lead by example. He's so well-liked in the dressing room. He's loved off the ice because he's unbelievable with the fans in the community. He's just a tremendous person and a special talent on the ice as well. So, I mean, I think the way this is going to work is Jim's going to set his price. And if someone will meet it, then a deal probably could get done. Now, is that price going to be too high because we value him that high? That's, I guess, the question that needs to be answered. But as we know, as you know, and Moncton's had some great hockey teams, you need good goaltending to win. I think there's some teams out there that have question marks in goal right now. There's no doubt about it. The problem is a lot of these teams that are stacked and ready to go, I think they're really comfortable with their 3 20-year-olds that they already have in their rotation. So that's a real tough decision for some of these teams to pull out a 20-year-old veteran to add a player like Frankie LaPena. And I'm thinking about Gatineau. I'm thinking about Sherbrooke. I'm thinking about the Quebec Ramparts. Are they actually thrilled with their goaltending right now? I don't know. I don't think Gatineau has quite settled. But I mean, who are you taking out? You got Cole Cormier. You got Isaac Beliveau, and then you got your captain, Mannix Landry. So, I mean, which one of those guys do you take out for a 20-year-old like Frankie? And that could be maybe a downfall of the 20-year-old market. To me, I mean, and not being biased, but I'm going to be biased and not to be going to be
You're allowed to be.
But I'm going to be a homer as well.
Yeah.
But, I think Frankie's the best goaltender in the league right now, and I think he might be one of the best in the country. And, you got to pay a significant price for him. And if it's not met, you know what? Even though we don't have a pile of picks or a pile of prospects or this and that, he's still going to give us a chance to win each and every night. I think at the end of the day, some team is going to come knocking because, those guys know that if you don't have great goaltending, you can have whatever you want in your lineup up front. If you let weak goals in, it can deflate a team, so it's going to be interesting. I can't pinpoint a team that would be, that I would put the odds on favorite to acquire Frankie. Is it a seller's market or is it a buyer's market? I think after a couple of years with COVID, there's mandates with some of these teams to at least get around or two. I mean, you look at the Eastern Conference. I mean, you got the Quebec Ramparts. Then who do you have? Halifax. Yeah, well, Halifax to me has some questions in goal potentially. I like Rousseau, but Brady James hasn't taken off to where he needs to be, and Rousseau hasn't proven that he can be the guy to take the team to the next level. And now, will he get that opportunity? Probably, but even Halifax has some warts. So does a team like Rimouski, does a team like Moncton think that they have a shot to get by not only the first round but maybe the second round as well? And I'm sure there's a lot of that deciphering going on. And talking to Jim, it's a good year to be poor in the Maritime Division because it's true. I mean, you got the Halifax Mooseheads who we've shut out and beaten, and then you have everybody else kind of just spinning their tires.
Yeah,
Breton spinning their tires. Moncton's, trying to be better. I expect them to add. Then you have St. John and Bathurst that are definitely going to sell. So, it's a good year to be poor in the Maritime Division because you're going to have competitive games against the Maritime Division opponents. We've already seen when Quebec-based teams come in, they've just been ruling the roost, right? So that has kind of teetered a little way where the stronger teams are in Quebec and the weaker teams right now are in the Maritimes. So that kind of bodes well, I think, for everybody on this side. But, which one of those teams is going to step up and acquire some pieces to make, maybe not make an all-in run, but make a run that maybe you get to the semifinals, and we all know how huge gates are come playoff time.
Yeah. Realistically, like what do you put the value at for LaPenna right now? Because, I mean, he is a rental, because he's a 20-year-old goalie. He's not coming back next year. And historically, goalies don't fetch very large returns. So where do you think like his return is right now?
Well, you wish that you could get what Val-d'Or got for Etienne Montpetit back 3 or 4 years ago, and that was a first, second, and third. But I think that probably is a little rich. A couple years back when Baie-Comeau, their goalie, went down and they traded for Dorio at a St. John at the 11th hour. I think their starting goaltender got hurt the night before the trade deadline. They coughed up a first and a 14th round pick for Dorio. I think Jim would love to get a first round pick plus for Frankie, but I mean, if it's 2 2s and a prospect or something like that, I think that's a little bit more realistic. The other issue is, I mean, you have Coulombe, who won a league championship last year. You have Lavallee, who's had a pretty good start. You have Erdebees, who has a Q championship and a Memorial Cup championship. And there's another 20-year-old goaltender out there that I'm not thinking of either. So I mean, that's kind of why the market is, it's not quite as strong. Well, you got Robillard in Sherbrooke, right? So I mean, there's 5 20-year-old goaltenders that are really good goaltenders. And I heard that St. John was going to be asking for the moon for Erdebees, and rightfully so. They gave up a lot for him, and he has the resume that nobody can match, right? And then you shift the market to 19-year-old goaltenders. Well, you got Darvaux, who's Invicto, who is their MVP of the first half of the season, and then you have Blackburn, who's in Val-d'Or, and their GM up there always wants the world for his players. So they're, once one goaltender moves, I think that maybe a domino or two will fall. But we're sitting pretty. I mean, Frankie's resume is what it is. Like, you guys have seen him. He's been the first
too much
or second or third star,
much.
and 95% of the starts he's had in the first half of the season.
Yeah.
Right.
We've seen him.
He's a difference maker. Yeah. He's a difference maker, and Jim has a price on him, and rightfully so. Now, whether or not a team pays for it, I'd love to see him a chance to win. I was shocked that nobody paid the price for him this past summer for him to come in, because there was rumors that everybody wanted him. Everybody wants him, but nobody wants to pay, right? That's the issue.
Yeah, 100%. And like we've seen since I've been here, the three, like Matty Welsh, Ellis, LaPenna, it doesn't matter what goaltender is going to be in the net. It seems like they always have our numbers. So, but I mean, looking at this team, we had Chris on a couple weeks ago, and he talked about, Charlottetown and the teams that were selling. And, the Islanders have never really bottomed out, gone full hardcore, scorched the earth rebuild. Is this kind of the time, maybe led by Brabenec up front, where, you explain to the fans like, hey, we're ripping this right down to the studs? Or is this we're going to move a little bit here and there, see what we can get, and stay competitive and maybe do some damage in the playoffs?
I would be shocked if Brabenec is on this team after the Christmas trade deadline. I mean, I know for a fact that every high-end team that wants to win wants Jake Brabenec, because he's an upgrade on every Euro in the league, right?
Yeah.
Jim wasn't even out of parking lot in Sherbrooke last year, and Steph Julian was calling about Brabenich. That's how much they liked him, and seeing he's a 200-foot player, and I think he might be a better player than Nikita Alexandrov was as a 19-year-old. He's just so responsible defensively, can kill penalties, can win faceoffs. He's just a smart two-way player that you win with in the playoffs. And I know for a fact that somebody's going to step up and pay a hefty price for Jake Brabenich. Now, what does that price include? I would it starts with a first. There's no non-negotiable about that. And then plus on top. But once again, like Brabenich, you have a couple pieces that are holding up the whole thing. And it's my good buddy Gordie Dwyer and Bathurst. He's got Riley Kidney and Jacob Melanson. And those are two pieces that a lot of the contending teams are in. And if they don't meet that price, then all of a sudden it kind of comes our way, I would think, to Brabenich. So, there's those two pieces, Brabenich and LaPenna. I think Michael Horth has drawn some interest, and I would have to think Biaka Batuka and potentially Kieran Gallant are drawing interest as well. So, there's not, that's the issue with the Islanders. There's not a whole lot of 19-year-old rental talent. It's more 20-year-olds. And then you got Brabenich and Horth. And Horth will be a very, if he doesn't sign pro in his back as a 20-year-old, he would be a very valuable 20-year-old next year in the league, I would think as well.
I was going to touch on Michael Horth because he is a guy I would love to have here.
Yep.
Because like you just said, Corey, if he's not back if he doesn't sign and go pro, he will be one of the top 20-year-olds in the league next season. And if there's anything Moncton needs right now, it's a 19-year-old who can step into the top six and still be a top six player next year as well.
You know what, and I think there's a match to be had there, right? I think there's a match to be had in Moncton with Horth, and he's not one of those guys that's going to cost a fortune. He's probably in around the value of what we paid for Bailey Peach, I would think, a couple years back. If he's moving, the problem with us moving Michael Horth would be we got to go and replace that guy next year. Mm-hmm. So we already know what we have in house right now, but you have to go replace that guy next year. So that's the question mark with moving a guy like Michael Horth, unless a team wants to pay the price. And I haven't really talked a whole lot about it, but a couple years back we paid a 2, a 3, and a 7 for Bailey Peach, and then if he played in the league the year after, it was an extra second-round pick. So 2 2s, a 3, and a 7. It is basically value for that kind of mid-tier 25, 30 goal scorer. So Michael Horth certainly is a guy that I know a lot of teams will have interest because he's a late bloomer. He's a big physical player, kills penalties. He's got some untapped offensive potential. He's got 20 points in 27 games. He's a legit top 6 player that brings size and can play a physical game. And, he can be on the ice when you need a goal, even on the ice when you're protecting a goal. And he's a big fit, I think, for a lot of teams here that are not maybe looking to go all in, but looking to improve and maybe give a run this year and have a real solid 20-year-old kid coming back for the year after.
It's funny, while you're talking about Horth there, I was thinking Brabenich, it's kind of in the same wave as the 20-year-old goaltenders. You're waiting for the first one to fall. A Euro makes it a little bit more difficult, and you've got Barbashev, you've got Ivan who are in this room. Like, you're looking for a Euro, you got to try and upgrade when you lose on talent when you're talking about those guys. But just talk about some of the rookies that definitely will be here after the trade deadline, and obviously it starts there with Marcus Kersey and Brett Arsenault, Robbie Rutledge. Just talk about the young guys that have kind of made an impact in the first half and will be counted on to play a little bit more minutes than they're used to in the second half there on the island.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Kersey is, come as displayed here for the Islanders, and the leading point getter among rookie defensemen. I work with the team scouting as well, so I was really high on him last year coming into the draft. The problem is we had no picks, a lot like we have now, and I was shocked that he got out of the first round. I was shocked we got him where we did in the, I think, 31 or 32 overall. Him and Michaud went back to back. But, I mean, I was up at the Q Challenge Combine, and he was, in my mind, the best defenseman amongst them all up there. I mean, Thomas Lavoie, obviously a nice defenseman as well, but Kersey, I seen P.O. Wall come in from Victoriaville last weekend, and he dominated as an 18-year-old. And that's where I see Kiersey when he gets a little bit older. It's been, some adjustments for him, not going through the middle of the ice on the backhand where he could get away with that at prep school. He just can't get away with it here. But his feet are unbelievable. He's got some grit to him, too. I've seen him lay out a couple big guys where he just kind of stepped into them. His offense is there, and it's only going to get better, right? And, he plays with a veteran, Jeremy Biakwatuka. It certainly makes him a better player on the ice. So, we're pumped for him. To me, he's got the makings of a franchise-type defenseman. And then Alexei Michau's off to a great start as well. I mean, at one point he led all rookies in goal scoring. He's kind of cooled off a little bit, but he's got a great shot. Right shot. He's got some underrated puck skills as well. His feet, obviously, I mean, there's no perfect player out there. His feet need some work, but they're coming along here. Just a student of the game, loves it. So, I mean, we're happy with those two pieces. And then you mentioned some of the other kids. Yeah, Brett Arsenault's had a decent start for us. And, one of the 17-year-olds, Ross Campbell, has had a tremendous start to the New Brunswick PEI Major Midget League season. In my mind, I thought he was right there to make the team. And when he's been called up and played games, he hasn't looked out of place. Everybody's really excited about him. Nico Boudreau is the guy that we drafted, and Simone Duguay out of Northern. Duguay's played a few games with us already. He's got a calm and presence on the back end. Kind of reminds me of Anton Topolnitsky. And Nico Boudreau, I mean, goaltending, he's off to a terrific start. He's getting peppered every night up in Bathurst, but he leads the league in save percentage, and he's just a competitive kid in goal. So, there's some prospects there, but as we all know, you got to build through the draft. And, some of these players that are going to go out are going to bring back picks and prospects. And that's certainly, but the Islanders don't want to bottom out. They want to remain competitive. And Jim's scouring the free agent, season. That's the big thing. I mean, you go pick up Gio Morno. He stepped right in. Lucas Romeo's getting NHL looks. I mean, we don't have those three guys with Rutledge and Hollingsworth and Rain Nadeau. There's 5 guys on the roster, and you're pulling 5 guys from either weren't ready at a major midget, or you're pulling free agents out of junior A. So that free agent influx has been huge. Yes, you swing and miss on some, but Jim and Guy and Hendo, I mean, all 3 of them are from Ontario. They all have connections all over the place. I wouldn't be shocked to see more free agents come in here potentially. I mean, Jim doesn't care where you're from. All he cares about whether you compete or not.
Yeah.
And if you're ready to compete, you're going to play. And if you're not ready to compete, you're going to go play someplace else. It's a pretty simple formula over here on the island.
Yeah. So one last one from us, or Corey. I guess who's been your biggest surprise of the first half of the season?
Well, they were in town last Friday night, and to me, it's Victoriaville. I mean, I see the record, and I'm thinking, I look at the names in the paper, and I'm thinking, these guys, they're not that good, but they came in, and they were dominant. I mean, you want to talk about hungry on the puck. They won every battle. And I talked to Carl Millette before. I got to know Carl really well a couple years ago, and we lost them in the semifinals, up 2-1, and then collapsed and lost the 2 final games, including basically a 1-0 loss with an empty net goal in Game 5 to go to the finals against Val-d'Or. A terrific young coach, and he was telling me that the chemistry in the room is second to none, one of the best he's ever been around, and their commitment to blocking shots, it has been outstanding, and it was right there. I mean, they blocked probably 20 shots. They got great goaltending, good structure on the back end, and they work their nuts off each and every shift. So for them to be sitting in second place 2 years after winning the Q championship and basically pretty well stripping it bare afterwards, 26-1-2, 43 points. I think they're 11-12 at home. To me, that's the biggest surprise in the league. The other surprise on the downside, I thought Blainville was supposed to be pretty good this year. I mean, obviously, Patrick Gay would make them a much better hockey team. And we all know he's gone pro and probably likely not coming back. And there's some loose ends to clean up on that trade. But, I mean, they've lost 6 in a row. They've only had 10 wins out of 28, a team that was, I think, going to try to push a little bit. I would suspect that has been disappointing for them. And then, Cape Breton. I mean, what are you going to say about Cape Breton? Same old Cape. I mean, they're trying to get things righted over there, and I think they're going to do it the right way with Sly Couturier, but I mean, how much patience are left in that fan base, right? I mean, you can only lose for so long before you start struggling at the gate. And I feel bad for everyone over there because it's a terrific hockey town, a lot of terrific people, but you can only support a losing team for so long. And, it's a tough grind over there right now.
Yeah. Well, you're bang on with Victoriaville. I think Moncton had 25 shots, and I think they directed 50 at the net because they blocked everything. And when they blocked it, the guys were on the bench pumping sticks, and that's exactly what they do. So I think if there's a team to kind of follow in these, win the championship, rip it down, bring it back up real quick, Victoriaville is definitely one to look at. But we're going to let you get out of here and get back to Christmas shopping. I'm sure you don't have all your Christmas shopping done there, Corey. And once again, we thank you for joining us on the annual Trade Deadline show. And hopefully we'll have you on sometime in the second half.
Listen, boys, there's one thing I love to do more than Christmas shopping. That's talk hockey, right? So my wife was already down at the Black Friday sale. I just got a visa statement I got to take care of. So, yeah, you know how it works.
I do, yeah. Well, actually, it's my visa statement that she has to look at. So, yeah.
my invoice will be in the mail, boys. Always a pleasure talking. Continue success with your show anytime, and Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners.
Same to you, Corey.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks.
All right, now we transition from the Islanders to the Sea Dogs. We once again have tracked down Jamie Tozer. We got him on our time zone, voice of Station Nation, and representing the Sea Dogs. Jamie, when did you get into Halifax from your flight? Yesterday, a couple hours ago? Like what's your time frame?
I got in last night. Actually, had a pretty quick trip home. Left Abbotsford at 6 a.m. and got into Halifax around 6:30. So that's not too bad.
It's unreal because I've been in 2 airports in the past year, and I wanted to get out of them. And you seem to be like, before we get into trades, like, what are your tips and tricks for getting in and out of the airports and not being stuck in them for like 9 hours at a time?
He has Nexus.
It's got to have some kind of gold card.
Nexus would be a smart idea. I actually don't have that, but that is a good idea. I actually usually play it pretty safe with connections. Like I usually look for a connection that's a couple hours longer, just because the chances of your entire trip getting derailed are slimmer. Yeah. So I usually don't mind that. The trip home was actually really tight. I was a little nervous with some of my connections. I think I had a 40-minute connection in Toronto, which is pretty tight. But
yeah.
So and then I usually plan ahead too. Like I buy my tickets quite early, so they're cheaper. And just because I travel so much, I have a pretty high status, so that helps too. So you learn a lot of small tricks along the way.
Not a big deal. Just throws that because I purchased a lot. I'm a pretty big deal.
Yeah, low key. Yeah, low key flex, right?
Yeah. No, and hey, you're one of the top guests on the show. Like you've been on here the most, so that's why we get you. So we talked about Frankie LaPena there with Corey Arsenault and how the 20-year-old goaltender market, it's almost musical chairs. There's too many 20-year-old goaltenders for not enough spots, and so we'll just start with Herta Bees. I mean, he's been pretty good for him. He hasn't played as much as obviously LaPena has in Charlottetown, but just what is the feel for Herta Bees? Is he going to be moved? Obviously they want to, or is it let him finish his career in someplace more than a year?
Yeah, he had a bit of a tough start to the year with the injuries. I don't think he really played up to the level that he knows he's capable of, but the past few starts, I think he's really looked quite good, and he's kind of found the form that he was in last year and what we've seen from him through a lot of his career. So I think he's really looked like the goaltender of a Memorial Cup caliber team that he was last year. So I think he's definitely finding his groove again. I would imagine that the Sea Dogs are going to look to trade him, at least see what's out there. And I think a lot of that's just going to depend on the market, because there are, other goalies out there, and obviously him being a 20 complicates things. But I've had this conversation with a couple people. You look at numbers around the league, and Hershey Bees might not have the best numbers right now, but at the same time, when you look ahead and you envision your team in a game 7, is there another goalie you'd rather have in that situation? And Hershey Bees has been there in those high pressure situations, and more often than not, he's performed in those situations. So that's a huge benefit to any team. So I think there's going to be interest, but at the same time, and I know Adam, you talked about this in your season preview show. I mean, he does add a lot of value to St. John, and him being on this team legitimately gives this team a chance every night.
Yeah.
We've seen that a few times, even in his most recent start, making 38 saves in the Armada win. So him sticking around isn't the end of the world and would benefit the Sea Dogs. But I think if they can find a good return, I'm sure they'll look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to really bottom out, and if he can give you a chance to steal a couple wins, that's never a bad thing.
Yep, absolutely. And I think the Sea Dogs this time around in this rebuild, I kind of get the feel they don't want to bottom out as hard as they did last time. I think they really want to insulate this group a little bit with some experience, and obviously he's a big part of this team.
Do you think part of the reason that they'd want to move Hurtubise is to ensure that there's more playing time for Brideau? Because I mean, at this point, you got to assume he's the goalie of the future for the Sea Dogs right now.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something they're looking at, and I'm actually a little surprised how little he's played. I'm sure the plan in the second half, no matter who's here, is to play him more. But I've been a little surprised how little he's played. But yeah, I'm sure that's going to be a factor into the situation. But at the same time, at the start of the year, the Sea Dogs seemed pretty content with keeping 3 goaltenders for a long time. So they must have this kind of figured out and decided that they're okay with this situation.
So this team, obviously, when you put up the banner, you're allowed to have those tear it to the studs rebuild. And just what is this team going to look like in the second half? Are we really going to recognize any of the guys if you're outside of that market? Is it whatever's not a rookie and not a 04, 05 is out the door for what they can get to try and recoup? Because, you look at their draft prospects in 2023, they don't hit the podium till a 6th round pick. So is it, for lack of a better term, whatever's not nailed down is heading out the door?
I think I don't think it'll be as bad as we've seen it in recent years and some rebuilds. I think, obviously I think priority is to get more draft picks. They absolutely have to get draft picks. There's no way around it. They have got to restock the draft pool. So I definitely think some of the older guys are going to go out, which isn't a surprise to anybody. But I think we'll see a few guys stick around. I think, Charlie DeRoche, for example, I think he'll probably stick around. I wouldn't be surprised if Connor Trenholm's still here. Nicola Ford is still a younger guy, but I wouldn't be surprised. I would imagine he'll probably still be here. But like I mentioned before, I think they'll want to, insulate this young group a little bit better than they did last time. With some veteran experience. So, if you're not a St. John Sea Dogs follower, you're probably going to have a hard time recognizing a lot of the names on the roster in the second half. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to be quite as young as what we've seen in the most recent Sea Dogs rebuild in the early goings.
So what you're saying, it's going to be like Moncton in 2016, 2017, where nobody recognized names on the team and they went on like a 28-game losing streak.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
I hope that doesn't happen in St. John because that was
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah.
That was painful just remembering the celebration of beating Sherbrooke to end the losing streak was one of winning the President's Cup.
Yep.
And you had to be there for every game. I mean, Jamie's going to go to Regina or Hamilton or finish his AHL. He's 20. They get to 21 straight losses. He's like, actually, I got to go watch Port Elgin play somewhere down in this against Kentucky. I'm going to go here, right?
Oh,
And you have to sit through that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was rough. That was the Lafreniere tank year, right?
that was the tank for Lafreniere, but we got Pelche, so it was a fair trade-off. But just the I
don't think the Sea Dogs are aiming for that level of terribleness, but you never know.
I would never wish that upon
Anybody. No.
Um,
I'm glad I didn't have the show during that because it would have been
imagine.
awfully tough.
obviously, the Sea Dogs have the benefit of, when trades happen. Every player has a specific value, and playoff experience, championship experience always happens to increase the value. How do you think this will affect, like a return for, a Peter Reynolds or a Cam McDonald, because they can just turn around and say, well, they've got the ring, so they're bringing you the experience.
Yeah, I think it will play a factor, and I know there's probably people kind of rolling their eyes at that just because when you look at the numbers, they really don't have that much game experience. But at the same time, there's not a lot of players in the league because of COVID that have a lot more experience.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that it is going to be a factor a little bit, especially for teams that are really looking at playing in the Memorial Cup because, as we know, the Memorial Cup is a different beast than the playoffs. But obviously, you need to get through the playoffs first. But I think it will play a factor. I don't know how much or how big. I definitely think if the Steelers had gone on a 3 or 4 round playoff run, it'd have a bigger impact. But I think it will impact somewhat.
So we talked about this with Corey. Obviously, we kind of know who's going out the door, and just some of the names that when you're in the building, you're going to be excited to watch. And obviously, Vince Ellie is one of them, but just a couple of the rookies that are going to be there after the deadline you're kind of excited to watch, or some of the prospects that will be moving up into the lineup that will be playing a little bit bigger roles as some of these guys like Burns and McDonald's and Reynolds kind of head out the door.
Yeah, well, Ellie's definitely one of them. Cole Burbage is another. Pavel Fleck, who's been a pretty good import, who I think given a bigger, more consistent role, can probably produce a little bit more. Thomas Sherba is a guy who's been out injured quite a bit. I'm curious to see him play more. He hasn't played much this year just because of injury, but I'm curious to see him more. He's a free agent from Ontario. And then on the back end, it's been really interesting. You look at St. John's defensive numbers, and they're pretty bad. But at the same time, I think this group's played pretty decent considering what they've had to play a lot every night because of injuries. Nate Tivy, who's another free agent from Ontario, has been really, really impressive on the back end. And Nicholas Bilodeau, again, another young guy. I'm curious to see him kind of elevate his game in the second half. And then I know a local guy to you guys, Jeremy Richard, who hasn't had the greatest start. Kind of was a healthy scratch at times. Has had some injuries now, but I'm also curious to see him get more playing time. And then Bordeaux too, who's like you mentioned, is probably going to be the goalie of the future. So hopefully we'll see more of him in the second half.
So just to wrap things up, because like Adam will say, you probably got some Christmas shopping to do. You're always on the road, so.
True.
I'm going to be asking this to everybody because I like to do that when we interview across the division. Who or what is your surprise in the first half of the season?
Oh, well, Victoriaville. In the league, Victoriaville. I definitely did not expect that at all.
That's 2 for 2.
Yeah, that's like, if they can keep that up, that's quite a story, really. That's pretty wild. I guess from a St. John perspective, again, the defensive play of St. John, I know the numbers aren't pretty, but where this team was at this point in the last rebuild, it just looks so much better, so much more structured. I really think this team coming up is going to be a lot better defensively than what we saw in the last rebuild, which was obviously the major problem for so many years with that group. So I definitely think the Cetos are off to a good start defensively.
All right, man. Like Jeremy says that I always say, we'll let you get out of here, let you get back to your Christmas shopping, but we do want to make sure that you will at least be in TD Station for Spice Up Your Game on New Year's Eve.
I will, yes.
Okay, because I'm trying to get Jeremy
and
the wives to go down to see Spice Girls, because you don't always get to see them, and that's a pretty big deal. A, it's Spice Girls. B, teams doing things to attract fans. It's not a big deal. So as long as you're confirmed at that one, we might possibly make our way down there.
All right, confirmed. I'll see you guys there.
Big Spice Girls fans over here, but no, man, we appreciate you taking the time off your busy flight schedule to stop in and talk trade deadline on our annual show, and hopefully we can have you on maybe after the deadline or into the second half to just chat about how the deadline went.
Awesome, sounds good, guys. Anytime.
Thanks, Jamie. So from we basically start with the two teams that have won the most in the past 2 years on this, and we're 2 for 2 with Victoriaville. But both teams are in a kind of a similar situation. They both got a 20-year-old goaltender they'd like to move. They both got veteran players that they'd like to move, and they both kind of want picks back. St. John more than Charlottetown, but they kind of mirror each other.
Absolutely. I think they're probably going to compete for maybe one of the most active teams in the deadline. Because like you said, they've got experience, they've got goaltending they need to get rid of. They want picks back. They're going to want to be stocking their cupboards up, and there's no better time than now because they've got the assets to do it. And I think Victoriaville. I'll ask that to everybody, and I think it's going to be a clean sweep.
Well, it's 3 for 3 because those two, and we're thinking the same thing on Victoriaville.
Absolutely. If who do we have left to do, Johnny?
So next Thursday, we've got Willie Paloff of the Mooseheads, and we're trying to get Pat. Get back to us.
Trying to get Pat
McNeil, and we may have Cedric Blodin from the Armada.
Okay.
To talk about the Armada and some of the Quebec teams there. Cool. So could be a little bit of an extended show, but that's what we got next Thursday.
So you're paying me overtime next week?
I will let Layla cook something for you. You request it, she will cook it, and that's how we roll.
Giggity.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to our Maritime Roundtable Trade Deadline show.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Wildcast Podcast. Follow us on social media at Moncton Wildcast.